right, guys, we're back. Trying to focus this video. Okay, so I'm going to be going over the most asked about and missed problems from 8.5 and 8.6. So feel free to fast forward if I'm not going over a problem that you need. I'm going to go over 27, 30, 31, 37, and 39 from 8.5. So those are the ones I'm going to go over. So like I said, fast forward if you don't need any of those, because then right after this, I'm going to do 8.6 unless I go too long, and then I might have to start a new video for 8.6, which is probably a good idea. Let's do that. I'll do two videos, one video for 8.5, one video for 8.6. So this first video will be 8.5, and I'm going to do these problems, which don't forget, these are on my Google Classroom detailed answer keys where you can see all of my work and the answer, so that if you get it wrong, you can see, okay, where is it that my work is different than Mrs. Wandra's work? And then that can kind of help you to correct yourself. So sometimes you might be able to correct yourself by looking at my answer key, and then you might not need to ask about this question on the feedback form because you're like, oh, I see what I did wrong, and you fixed it. So if that happens, feel free to not click that number on the answer key or on the feedback form. So this is number 27. And we're always asking ourselves with every problem, can I divide out a GCF? It's not that you have to write this every time, but these are the thoughts going through our head. Can I divide a GCF other than one? Nope. Is it 4 terms? Nope. We don't know question 3. And so question 4 is really, we're doing A times C, but this A value happens to be a 1. So we're saying what multiplies to -6 and adds to 5. And if it multiplies to a negative, then 1 has to be negative, 1 has to be positive. And since I add to a positive 5, I must have more positive, so that's 6. And then this is 1, negative 1, excuse me. And the whole reason why I found these two was so that I could expand the middle term of 6x, so that now I actually do have 4 terms, because we know exactly what to do with 4 terms. We put those straight into boxes. So x squared, 6x, x, -6. Divide out the GCF of the top line and then get everything to multiply in. -1. Check that last box. Does -1 times 6 equal -6? Yes. So then I get x minus 1 and x plus 6. That's the answer to 27. For number 30, it says the area of a desk rug is d squared minus 7d minus 18, and it asks for what are the dimensions, which means what's the length and what's the width. Because we know area, so this area right here equals length times width. So if we already have the area and you want to know the length and the width, then you need to factor this area, because factoring it will put it back into a multiplication problem with two things multiplied in parentheses, and one of them will be the length and one of them will be the width. So if I factor, I say, is there a GCF? And since this is 1, we have no coefficient or constant GCF, no common variables, so no GCF, it's not 4 terms. So we're going to try the X method to turn the 3 terms into 4 terms. What multiplies to -18? If it multiplies to a negative, 1 has to be negative, 1 has to be positive. And so then I'd say -9 and +2. The whole reason why we found that -9 and +2 was to expand that middle term. The first and the last term stay the same. So then I'd get -9d plus 2d. Now I have my 4 terms, and I can put those into boxes in standard form. And then I'd take the GCF of the top line and make sure everything multiplies in. Check that last box. And I'd get 2d plus 2 times d minus 5 when I, d minus 9 when I factor that. So we'll call one of those the length and one of those the width if we're being super careful with our units. Oh, did this give me a unit? I don't know. If it didn't give me a unit, then I'd say parentheses u. If it gave me a unit, then I might put feet or inches or whatever it said. Okay, number 31, same type of problem, but it says that the area of the rug is this. So if this is the area and I need to know the length times the width, then I need to factor this trinomial, quadratic trinomial, and put it back into multiplications, and one of them will be the length and one of them will be the width. So I really would say the C value times the A value, which is 1 right there. So that'd be -4 times 3, and that would be -4 times 1. So the whole reason we found that -4 and that 1 was to expand the middle term. but my r squared and my negative 4 stay the same. So I get r squared minus 4r negative 4. GCF of the top line, make sure everything multiplies in. Does 1 times negative 4 equal negative 4? Yes. So I get r plus 1 times r minus 4. But since this asked me for the dimensions, I will call one of them the length and one of them the width. And it's okay if I called my length r plus 1 and you called your length r minus 4, as long as they don't give us any information. That's totally fine. Number 37, I think these ones are definitely trickier because they have two variables. And so that just kind of gives us way more to look at. And I asked myself, is there a GCF? This has two M's and there's an M here, but there's no M here. There's no GCF of the coefficients. So no GCF, it's not 4 terms. So I'm going to use the X method to try to turn the 3 terms into 4 terms. So I'd say what multiplies to negative 28 and adds to negative 3. I'm just looking at the numbers. So don't let the fact that there's an extra variable there and an extra variable there, like don't let that confuse you. Just look at the numbers. So what multiplies to negative 28 and adds to negative 3? Because negative 28 times 1 is negative 28. And I say, oh, negative 7 and positive 4. Okay, I have more negatives. A negative times a positive equals a negative, and I have more negatives, 7 negatives and 4 positives, because I add up to 3 negatives. And so the whole reason why I found that negative 7 and 4 is to expand this middle term, and I leave the variables exactly the same. So instead of negative 3mn, I'm going to say negative 7mn and positive 4mn. And the negative 28n squared stays exactly the same, and the m squared stays exactly the same. Okay, so I was just really kind of using just the numbers. And now once I get it into boxes in standard form, then it makes, all those extra variables and things, it makes it easier to deal with. So I take the GCF of the top line. What m squared and negative 7mn have in common is an m. And then I say, what times m is m squared? M. What times n is negative 7mn? And I'd say negative 7n. Because I say negative 7n times m is negative 7mn. What times m is 4mn? And that would be 4n. And then I say, does 4n times negative 7n equal negative 28n squared? Yes. So I have 4, no, excuse me, when I say 4, m plus 4n times m minus 7n. Okay, that's number 37. I got one more from 8.5 to do, and that'd be number 39. So 39 was, again, these are trickier because they have two variables that you're dealing with. So I need to see if there's a GCF, W, no W, Z, and this has a 1, so no. Okay, so no GCF other than 1. It's not 4 terms. So I'm going to use the X method. I'm just looking at the numbers. So what multiplies to 40 times 1 is 40 and adds to negative 14. Well, if I multiply to a positive and add to a negative, then both my numbers have to be negative. Because in order to add to a negative, definitely one of our numbers has to be negative. But if it multiplies to a positive, then they both have to be negative. So I'm thinking negative 10 and negative 4. So that negative 10 and that negative 4 are used to expand the middle term. So instead of negative 14 WZ, I say negative 10 WZ and negative 4 WZ. And then the first term, W squared, and the last term, 40Z squared, those stay the same. Now I take those 4 terms, put them into boxes in standard form. Okay, W squared, negative 10 WZ, negative 4 WZ, 40Z squared, and I just take the GCF of the top line. That's W, W, and then negative 10Z, because negative 10Z times W is negative 10 WZ. And then what times W equals negative 4 WZ, and that would be negative 4Z. Does negative 4Z times negative 10Z equal 40Z squared? Yes, because negative 4 times negative 10 is 40. Z times Z is Z squared. So I get W minus 4Z times W minus 10Z. There's the answer. New video for questions on 8.6 in just 1 second.